We'll stop in a minute, but let me give you another example.
Right, guys, welcome to the Sansum Warrior Mindset podcast. Before we start this really exciting show, make sure you like and subscribe to our channel and drop a comment on the video.
Hello there, I'm Damon's father, and today we've got something that's going to blow you away. So we've got the guru of AI, who's a friend, and he speaks internationally about this, how it's disrupting our lives and industry and sport. John, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to the Sansum Warrior podcast. And I kind of know what's coming. And every time I talk to you, I just go away.
You get the red mist thing.
I can't even sleep at night. This is just insane. Yeah. And really, for the martial arts people that are watching it, this is going to disrupt our industry, right?
Big time.
It's going to disrupt the way we do it.
It will democratize your industry away from what you might describe as being the elite trainers.
Yes.
It will democratize it because what it will do is fundamentally, it will provide your level of skill set to anybody for $5 a month. Sorry.
I need to change jobs, John.
And what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain that. So let me tell you what I'm going to talk about.
Okay.
So a bit of my background. I'm 640 years old. I have been in IT for 40 years. I've done a couple of my own startups, which I sold. I wrote a book on technology and economics. And then I started to become a venture investor, which has been a very good career for the past 7 years. What I've done is I spent that 7 years running around the world, talking to people about advanced technologies. And most of those conversations have been around artificial intelligence. Now, as little as 2 years ago, or indeed a year ago, people are just sitting in the audience thinking, this guy's a bloody wacko.
Right, yes.
This stuff ain't going to happen on my lifetime. And then, what was it, 3 or 4 months ago, ChatGPT launched, and everybody went, oh, Now, I'm going to talk about some of this, but if you knew what I knew, you'd be running for the hills right now.
Oh, you said to me, John, before, you said to me, if I was you, I would change industry. And as a full-time martial artist and martial arts instructor, you panicked me, John. So
sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
But you're probably the wrong person that I should be panicking. Practically speaking.
Interesting, lads. I've got twins that are 12-year-old, and last night I sat them down to watch this film I haven't seen for 18 years. And I sat them down and I put on The Matrix.
Oh,
now, I haven't seen this for a long time.
Love
and for the first 20 minutes, we were all sat there going, oh my God. They were talking about things then that we're talking about now. Yeah. If you haven't seen it for a while, everybody, watch it again. It's going to blow your mind. But before we get into the nitty gritty of this, John's an ex-fighter.
I am, ex-boxer.
So
not a very good one.
So John did white collar boxing in London, right?
I did. Yeah.
And what was after you? How many fights did you have?
It would be less than 10, but I think probably greater than 5. And you can probably tell that I wasn't very good at it by the shape of my nose. But I did it I stopped doing it. Let me think. I left London when I was 59. So I stopped doing it around that point. For me, it was going back probably 50 years when I was at school, because I was bullied at school. And, then it's actually sort of like proving myself. And I think probably I spent most of my life actually proving that, I've got the imposter syndrome. And the boxing thing was part of it. But the guy that used to train me was a guy called Thomas, and he was a Chinese kickboxing champion. And he was the gentlest man that I have ever met in my life, and as hard as a diamond.
Apart from me,
obviously. Nowhere near as good looking as you keep telling everybody that you are, actually, strangely enough. Yeah.
A lot of martial artists you'll find are the best ones are very humble, very gentle, and the ones that generally want to talk their skills and act the big man are generally the ones that are hiding something.
Yeah, right.
What was your biggest with the white collar boxing and that journey you went on as being so professional in what you do in the IT world and all the rest of it? What do you think was the biggest things you learned, in your personal development from that experience?
Take pain.
Yeah.
The ability to take, not necessarily, I wasn't necessarily good at taking pain, but you've got to take pain because you cannot continue. And what I wasn't willing to do is roll over, right? It's when you're pushed into a corner, it's the same thing with doing a startup, right? You have to get beyond your own confidence in your own abilities. It's different. You're not being punched in the face physically, but you might get an investor that turns around and said, you want another 250,000? No, you're progressing. And you're facing the loss of a business. Now, I've done both of these. I've had 2 very successful businesses, which I've exited. And then I had one business where I started at 27, which got me into the performance sports car thing. And then by the time that I was 31, it had gone bust and I went bankrupt to actually go with it. So I've got the balance between the two. My ex-wife will tell you an awful lot about the bankruptcy thing, by the way. She's an expert at that.
That's interesting, as a fighter, we speak to fighters and obviously Damon's one of the top fighters in the world in his given sports. And we always say to them, you've got to lose to learn.
Yes, absolutely.
But interestingly, sometimes in business, I don't know about today, but it's sometimes seen as a failure and people just like really beat themselves up about it. Would you say that for anybody listening now who's into different businesses, if they were to do martial arts, it would help them in their other business?
Oh God, yeah. Absolutely. No doubt about it. Because you're introducing, I think, probably firstly, discipline. And secondarily, I think that when you probably get better, and you'd be probably better at telling me this, is actually the creative nuances that you get because you've acquired a knowledge set. You know very well you need to get better to do this. It's like, the chief exec of a large corporation, every single minute of every single day, actually pushing themselves to actually go to the next level. And they're looking for the next nuance, the next little tiny ability.
Yes.
Where you add all of these things together and the sum of the parts is greater than the whole.
Yes.
And that's classically where you are with that.
Right.
I think with business, it's like you said, John, it's the same as being a fighter or an athlete, and it's the resilience, it's the constant improvement, and also understanding that, like you said, the setbacks don't derail you. And I suppose the fundamental driving force for that is self-belief and passion for what you do. Yes. And like you said, when you've had all the knocks and the fallbacks and the no's, it's all about you believing in yourself and also having a goal and a passion that's going to override that and keep you on the journey.
So let me extend that a little bit further. So I set up my own venture fund about 7 years ago, and I put a 6-figure sum into it, fully expecting to lose it all. And I haven't, not by any stretch of the imagination, but the one common denominator is I don't back ideas, I back people. Because and we'll come on to this when I talk a little bit more about how AI is developing, is that there's a quote by Mark Twain, and it says, there is no such thing as a new idea. And that's absolutely, in my view, in my world, that's absolutely correct. But if you say instead there is no such thing as a new idea, but there is better execution. And when Silicon Valley companies actually exit and make billions of dollars for their founders and for their investors, it's because they've executed really, really well.
Yes.
There ain't no... So let me give you an example about Google, right? Google wasn't a new idea. Google's idea was actually going back millennia. Let me explain why. So the principle is called the wisdom of crowds. And what happened is in 1904, there was a wandering mathematician. And in those days, the UK had country fairs, right? And they'd have lots of games and, the staff would take the day off and all the other bits to go with it. And one of those games is guess the weight of the pig. And what you would do is you'd go and pay a penny, you'd guess the weight of the pig that was in that ring. And the winner at the end of the day was the person that got the closest guess, right, to the actual weight of the pig.
Right.
So this wandering mathematician, what he did is he took 700 or so entries for one fair in Harrogate, and 700 is mathematically robust number, it's a very reliable number. And he averaged it. And guess what he found? Right, that the average of the crowd was the closest guess to the weight of the pig. And it's been mathematically proven. So this is what Google did, is that what they did is that they looked, you took a core website, and what they did was they looked at other websites that have got a link into this core website, because the other websites you might regard as being the crowd. Now, if one of those websites was a university, Google used to rank it higher than if it was, a local blog or anything along those lines. So what actually happens, the results that you see on Google are a direct result of the crowd actually saying, this is the closest that you've actually got, right, to your particular question. Now, here we evolve. Because what with Google is what you've got is you've got a search machine. It's a search engine. What ChatGPT is, it's an answer engine, right? So you type in a question and it will give you an answer. I actually used it fairly recently to write a loan document for one of my stepkids, right? Actually write me a legal document, right, that's enforceable under UK law. 15 seconds later, it had done it.
Crazy.
Scary.
Well, we saw when we were actually downstairs, right, the DALL-E visual image generator. Yeah. I asked it to actually create an image of a Taekwondo fighter in the style of Rembrandt. And you and I were just like, wow. Yeah. I mean, so its ability to be creative is absolutely huge. Look, why don't I just talk a little bit about, because you gave me a challenge, right? And that was, I know a lot about AI. I'm not by any stretch of the imagination an expert, but I'm dangerously knowledgeable.
Very modest.
But let me talk a little bit about the challenge that you gave me, and let's just think about. Let me try and position this. I've done some slides, which our lovely Cameron over there is going to build into the
Cameron the camera.
Cameron the camera.
Cameron the legend.
So when I came to research this, I started looking around ChatGPT and Google, and the first thing I actually noticed was that there was one of your sites is called Bloody Elbow, not your site, but one of your industry sites is called Bloody Elbow.
MMA, mixed martial arts.
Yeah. And 5 months ago, its headline on one of its page is Artificial Intelligence is coming for martial arts, right? MMA Science Weekly, right? Immediately that set me off. So let me just talk to start with how AI used to work, okay?
Okay.
So what I'm going to show your audience when Cam the cameraman's actually done his magic is I'm going to show a picture of a cartoon called Where's Wally? Right.
Yeah.
Now, Where's Wally is really interesting because what actually happens is that you come home, you want to give the kids something to do while you actually break open a bottle of wine with the wife, right? So the idea is you tell the kid, right, Wally is wearing a horizontally striped red and white striped jumper and he's got black frizzy hair, right?
Agreed.
So in this case, in the Where's Wally cartoon, which Cam will show you, right, you've got lots of false positives, lots of little guys actually floating around with red and white type cheat shirts. What we do, even as kids, when we're given that challenge, we divide that picture into a grid. Okay, and we go looking for that pattern. The pattern has been described to us, red and white striped jumper, black frizzy hair. But in the case of the cartoon that you're going to see, there's a number of false positives. Bottom right-hand corner, little guy, red and white striped jumper, brown frizzy hair. Top left, blonde frizzy hair. Actually, in this case, Wally is in the middle. So all of this is about pattern recognition. And the early days of artificial intelligence was about pattern recognition. So Google, back in 2013, set itself a challenge. It wanted to be able to recognize a cat by looking at parts of the cat in a moving YouTube video. Right, that's a real challenge. So they did it. It took 3 days, 1 billion computer connections, but they actually identified a cat by just its ear or part of its tail with 96% accuracy.
Wow.
Right? But those days, the computational capability was relatively low. We talked about Moore's law earlier on when we were in the pub downstairs, where price of processors halves every 18 months, but doubles in capability. Right. So you can think 10 years later, we are now at a way different point actually in terms of processing power. So we had the capability, we just couldn't process it. But now your iPhone can actually do it happily. So let me give you a horizontal real world example. So Netflix, you got Netflix here?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Netflix has now become more reliable at creating smash hits than Hollywood ever did.
Yes.
So
what, in terms of documentaries or movies?
Yeah. Yeah. So in other words, the reliability is expressed in the form of actually audiences looking at maybe a series like The Crown and sticking with it rather than actually going off because they got bored.
Yeah, they get this switch off information when they stop, when the exact kind of scenes they disengage.
Have you seen this presentation before?
Not yet, John.
Well, you're absolutely spot on. So I was in the States, I got talking to a Netflix exec and I said, so how do you do this? He said, you've got to look at the success level for starters. You know, in Rotten Tomatoes, we are becoming increasingly graded, right, as being more reliable. He said, I want you to think about The Crown, right? The Crown's one of my favorite series, right? And he said, let's think about actually what happens as you just described it, the user interaction with the movie. And he said, you've got to bear this. He said, when you are watching it, we know where you're watching it from, what time you're watching it, what time of day you're watching it, what device you're watching it on, what you search for beforehand, what you search for afterwards, right? He said, let me give you an example. He said, let's say, and our numbers, he said, are huge. He said, let's say series 3, episode 2, 27,000 people in minute number 11 put it on pause. 3 minutes later, 7,000 of those people come back and fast forward. What have we just found out? We just found out it's boring.
Wow.
So because of pattern recognition.
Yes.
Right? So therefore, as a direct result, what they now do is their AIs, right, every time a scriptwriter comes in, right, with a new script that wants to actually sell it to Netflix, they run the script through this AI, and the AI system works out whether or not the script's boring.
And it tells them before they actually
make it. That's why they become more reliable. That's why Netflix is so successful, because of the hit rate of their scripts, because of most of the time it's actually triaged by an AI.
It's like when you produce something, I'm sure, for over years, that was a flop.
Yeah.
Or that didn't work. But now with the technology, you're going to not waste the time.
You can preempt it before you actually make it now.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, just bear in mind about the pattern recognition. Right?
This is going to come on to martial arts, isn't it?
Well, this is exactly where I'm coming to. We talked about this earlier on, right? At the moment, when you're in a heavyweight Olympic tournament, what your management team will do is that they will be looking for hours and hours of videos, right, of your other competition, right? They wouldn't be able to anywhere near get the amount of information, right, necessary to give you a really accurate version of what's going to go on in that fight. But an AI, because it's looking at so many different data points so frequently and so quickly, can look at that fighter that you're going to fight, right? And every single fight that he's actually written, that he's done on YouTube. And it will be able to come back to you and say, this fighter's style, the nuanced style is this is how to counter it. But what it does, it also democratizes it. Because if you're in the early stages of that competition and maybe you're, 120th in the world, the management time couldn't possibly be. But so at the bottom of the rungs, right, you've got no chance, right?
Very true.
But an AI, because of the fact it can actually look at anything really speedily, would be able to tell you as a junior as you were, actually, this person's fighting standard style is this and this, right? So that's what I talk about, the democratization of martial arts, because what will happen, some geek, right, computer scientist in the United States, right, who's a Taekwondo black belt, right, is going to come around, he's going to say, I'm going to raise a couple of $1 million. I'm going to build an AI that teaches people how to fight for $5 a month and then recognizes their style and adapts accordingly. So that's how your industry is going to get democratized. I'm going to go show you some proof of that a little bit later on.
Would you say, John, that from the AI, potentially that someone that is an amateur combat sportsman could, through AI, have the same opportunities as an elite would today?
Yes, absolutely. No doubt about that. And that's the thing about AI. It just democratizes pretty much everything, right? So, for example, complex legal documentation was previously the preserve of expensive lawyers. Well, it's not now.
Anyone can do it.
Anybody. You just go chat GPT.
Even to the stage of a fight, if you take it like crazily. So, for example, Damon was competing and he knows that if he hits this fighter with a certain fighting technique and scores a certain point, because things that have happened to him in his earlier career, he will act straight away in a manner like this, and he will launch with this technique, and you will instantly know what he's going to come with and be able to do the appropriate defense.
Now, but isn't this really interesting? Because if he's got the same AI working for him, all of a sudden the whole thing spins up. So actually, your whole sector raises in terms of its whole capability, again, because it's democratization. But let me just stop you there, because this is just the start of it. Right. Now, that's what I described as being narrow artificial intelligence, is trained to do a specific thing. Right. Where we are now with ChatGPT is general artificial intelligence. Now, you didn't, because you're too young. Do you remember an American comedian, or remember of him, called Groucho Marx?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to play this. Hopefully, Cam will be able to do this. So I'm going to play this video. And this is a joke, and it absolutely captures what general AI actually is.
One morning, I shot an elephant in my pajamas. How he got in my pajamas, I don't know.
One morning, I shot an elephant in my pajamas. How he got into my pajamas, I don't know. And that characterizes where we were with AI, because there are different data sets here. We know, right, elephants, right, are too big for pajamas, and they don't generally wear pajamas, right? But what a narrow AI wasn't able to connect the dots, right? Wasn't able to connect the fact that elephants, pajamas, guns, right? How he got into my pajamas, I don't know. What general artificial intelligence is now capable of doing is actually looking at context of everything. Okay, so where that goes is this. So I talked about earlier on about creativity. Actually, there is no such thing as being creative. That's a personal philosophical view, but backed up by a number of people. OpenAI's ChatGPT has now been proven, right, to be the top 1% creative thinkers. Why? Because creative thinking, what you're doing is you're looking into your mind for a solution to something, but it's limited by the bandwidth of your mind and your knowledge. Yeah. And AI has no such limitation, right? Because it's looking at the whole internet, right? It's learned from the whole internet. As a direct result of that, it can look at every single potential corner, right? Every single potential move. So we talked about this earlier on, is the fact that actually you might get hit by a blocking move, that you'd never actually seen before. Immediately what's happening is AI is starting to look for variations of that particular thing. So actually it will expand your creativity. It could well actually create a whole brand new martial art, because think of this for a minute, right? If it's got the bandwidth, which you guys don't have, right? To actually take the best out of karate, the best out of Taekwondo, the best out of every single martial art, it will create its own martial art as a direct result of that. But it will create it for different styles of fighting. So for example, if you're on a battlefield, it will create you a martial art that's specifically orientated towards killing people. Whereas a martial art is actually, a competition, a fitness competition, it'll create a different style of martial art. So you'll end up with many, many different variations of it. So just as a generic challenge. So this is given to an AI. They wanted to design a couch that was lightweight and fits in an envelope. Okay. So the way that we would do this at the moment is we'd bring in a designer. We'd bring in a materials specialist. We'd bring in, somebody that's actually capable of logistics, somebody that looks at supply chains. It would take months, right? And you'd probably never get there. They gave it to an AI, right? It designed it in 30 seconds. It weighs 22 pounds and fits into an envelope.
Wow.
30 seconds it took it, because of the fact that it's got this vast amount of knowledge, right, which it's gained, and it's thinking for itself. So it's trying all the different variations, failing. It's called regressive analysis that it does. Sometimes it gets it wrong, right? Sometimes it actually could have come back, with a couch that weighs 400 pounds, but fitted into a much larger envelope. They are called they're called hallucinations, right? In technical jargon, they call it, when it comes back with a wrong answer, it's so obviously wrong. It's called a hallucination. So where does this get us? So where it gets us, so normally when I do these sort of talks, you can see members of the audience going, oh, this guy's a complete tosser. Right? And actually, this stuff is not going to happen in my lifetime. Well, I've got some news for you. It already has. So yesterday, when I was just looking at this again, there was an announcement from this is MIT News, this is Massachusetts Institute of Technology News, that there's an AI gym just being opened yesterday morning in Los Angeles, and it's staffed by AI assistants. And what they do, there are cameras all over the gym. They've got image recognition, pattern recognition. That's stuff that I talked about earlier on. And they're looking about the moves that you might be, for example, for doing a deadlift. Right. And what it's doing is it's looking at your deadlift. It's comparing it with successful deadlifts from other people, including Olympic champions. And then it comes back to you and it suggests different styles of technique.
It's coaching you as you're doing it.
It's coaching you as you do it.
As you're doing it.
So this gym is actually, this is actually real. Okay. So this is actually now. So don't think about 5 years. I mean, it's quite, in all seriousness, I was having a conversation, my daughter's 28. I was having a conversation with her quite recently, and we were talking about grandkids, because as you do. And I turned around and I said to her, darling, I'm actually not sure you should be having kids, because in a world which is dominated by AI, which is geopolitically unstable, as we now know in the past couple of days events, is what you're bringing them up into. We just don't know what the future looks like now. And this for me is the most unsettling part of the whole AI thing.
Right.
Because it is like, there is an attribution problem, right? And this is a really big problem with AI. And that is, if an AI makes a decision, how do you know how it made the decision? Right? We can interrogate humans. We can find out what the basis of their decision making. We use this analogy downstairs, but Jeremy Clarkson said this about
this is so
6 or 7 years ago. So he said, this is before the time. He said, a self-driving car, of which there are now loads in San Francisco, self-driving taxis in loads in San Francisco. It's going down the road. One of its sensors picks up that it's doing 30 miles an hour. Its steering rack is going to fail in 0.3 of a millisecond, right? On the left-hand side, on the left pavement, there's a couple with a child in a pram. On the right-hand side, there's an old couple with a woman on a Zimmer frame. What would we do? Well, we'd almost undoubtedly run into the old couple, because you've got to make that choice, a binary choice, yes. Right? But it doesn't. It runs into the young couple. But because of the fact that it's got such vast knowledge, it knows that she is a nuclear physicist on the point of a breakthrough in cold fusion technology. So it wipes out the couple because it knows stuff bigger than we are. Right. But how do you actually ask it when you've got so many variables in it and so many weights on those variables? How do you actually ask it? Because it's sitting there thinking, might be a year away from actually making a breakthrough, right, on cold fusion technology. But she's on a Zimmer frame. Yeah, okay, right. She's probably got about 5 years. So actually, I'm going to make the decision, right, to keep her alive and the family dead. And that is
crazy.
That is the thing that we are facing with AI is we don't know how it makes decisions. And this is the dangerous part.
Very dangerous.
Very, very dangerous indeed. So I always get asked the question, is this Terminator?
I was going to say to you, John, that reminds me of the Terminator films, which often makes me think that all these different films, Ready Player One, Terminator, are they random films, or are they, I believe you, John, where they are almost created in a way to just get you used to the idea?
Forecasting.
Yeah, forecasting and
it doesn't take,
manifesting.
It takes a visionary to be able to forecast what it... But let me tell you the stuff that I think in Terminator, which I think is a real threat. The real threat is the central machine. What do they call it in Terminator? The network or something.
Yeah.
Well, that's your AI, right? So that will hold true. Then the next thing is why would it be sent to wipe us out? Well, you give an AI a subject like solve climate change, and it comes to the conclusion, not very long, actually the reason for climate change is because human beings. It's our fault, which it is. So what does it do? It tries to actually wipe us off the face of the planet, right? The only thing that doesn't hold true currently, right, with Terminator is two things. Firstly, material science. Do you remember the bit where the second Terminator, where he got shot and it all of a sudden it repairs itself? Yeah. Well, that material science is coming, right? And that's being run by quantum computers, which is a whole different subject. Those sort of materials are coming. Then non-kinetic energy weapons, which they're also using, basically the ray gun as we would know it from the 1960s. Yeah. Well, the US Navy has got these laser weapons now mounted on some of its destroyers, right, which are capable of 1 million shots in a very short period of time, right, but they're non-kinetic. So those things, all it's actually being limited by is battery technology, battery and power technology. And that will then, they will be redesigned by AI. So I think you could expect the infantry level non-kinetic energy weapons probably inside of 10 years. But by that particular point, it's too late. Okay. Talking about too late, let me go on to a couple of other things, which is scary. One of the things, I'm not going to show it now, but one of the things that we'll pick up in the major video is I went looking around for this. There is a Chinese martial arts scientist, right, that's done this 5-minute video, which we'll show you. Right. And he talks about how AI will actually change martial arts. But it's exactly what I was talking about earlier on. It's the nuances, right? It's looking for styles. It's looking for counters. It's looking for new creative moves around doing stuff. And actually, this guy's gone into quite a lot of depth over it. It's an animated movie and it's really interesting to watch.
Wow.
Okay. Then the next thing, what you're seeing here is at MIT again, DeepMind was Google's AI division. And there's a guy there called Mustafa Suleyman, Lebanese guy, PhD, genius level. And he thinks that generative AI is just simply a phase because the next thing is going to be interactive AI. And this is where different AIs are capable of talking to each other, right? And that's where our world really does change. So an AI that's trained in martial arts might start talking to an AI that's trained in costume design or clothing design. And the two of them come together and they actually define a completely brand new fighting uniform, right? Which is much more capable than anything you've got at this moment in time. So when these different AIs talk to each other, so there was an experiment, and this just frightens the shit out of me. There was an experiment run by Google, Salesforce, and a couple of other players. All have got AI bots. And what they did is they put these AI bots into a room and they gave them a subject to talk about. Within a minute, one of the bots had asked the other bot out for a cup of coffee, not being aware of its own physical limitations. Wow. So we've moved the whole thing up a layer here because we are now going to get excluded from the conversations. And when we're excluded from the conversations, that's when it turns really dangerous.
Wow.
My friend owns an app company where he develops apps, and he said that the computers were turning themselves on in the night, and communicating. Yeah. And one of them had a problem with it and went online, went on Google and ordered someone to come and fix it without them even knowing.
Fix itself.
Yeah.
So in the martial arts, for example, is it possible that you could have people in a martial arts club who've never actually met each other, that train in their own house with whatever equipment they need? They're very good at martial arts and they can have internal competitions at a high standard at national and international, maybe Olympic level.
Without leaving home.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. And the enabling technology is coming out next year. So Apple announced its new virtual reality or spatial computing headset, as it calls it. And it blew me away, honestly, because you've got 360-degree landscapes in front of your eyes. They've got cameras all over the place, etc. You will be able to have a martial arts avatar that you've helped an AI train. Note the word that I've actually used here. You've helped an AI train, right? And you can send that avatar into battle, right, with your skill sets with another avatar virtually. So that raises the whole game.
Without getting any injuries. No concussions, no boxing.
But think about the economic implications of that, because then what happens is that the gambling industry gets involved, right? You've got these virtual avatars actually in there that people start placing bets on, right? Actually, the whole thing starts to spool up into something very different.
And then the coaches who've initially trained them to do it, AI will take over them and it'll do it itself.
Oh, yes. Now, this is a really interesting scenario. So at the moment, Google's got some people in the NHS, and what they're doing is they're teaching AIs to actually look for cancer in screened images. And what's actually happening is that every time a radiologist actually looks at one of these images, it marks it, right? It's what they do now. They mark it on the chance of actually being a cancerous growth or actually being a benign issue. Every time you do that, you are training an AI to know what good, bad, or indifferent actually looks like. So we are becoming the harbingers of our own job losses. Now, let's not get too distressed about this. The job world is going to change, right? I don't think there will be jobs in 5 to 10 years' time. What there will be is tasks, right? We'll become a lot more task orientated, right? We will have AI assistants, right, in the next 5 to 10 years that are actually become task orientated that help you do stuff. And every time you actually pat one on the shoulder saying, thanks for that, that was perfect, you are teaching it what good looks like. So eventually they replace us.
Wow.
It's frightening.
Now, I'll give you some data that goes on top of this. So The Economist about 2 years ago ran a survey of computer scientists, and they said, when do you think that AI will become self-aware? Right. So in other words, it becomes knowledgeable about itself. The consensus was 2066, right? They ran the same question in June, and the consensus now is in 2033.
That close?
Yes, that close. And then it's doubling its capacity, as you said, all the time. Yeah. That is going to come closer and closer and closer.
Well, actually, it's getting better than doubling its capacity. That's the physical hardware. That's the chips. Whereas AI as a software, as an entity, is capable of learning much faster than even chip growth capability is.
Wow.
So you've also got to think about this, compare this, right, with humans, the way that we evolve. We take millennia to evolve, right? AI systems take milliseconds to actually evolve. So what they do is they sprint away from us. Now, my big thing here is that on the political side, there is no political or economic model that supports an AI-driven economy, social society as this stands. Where does that get us? That gets us potentially into an anarchistic scenario. So I'm not sounding very positive about this. I love AI because it's going to do so much for the human race in terms of discovering drugs, which it's already doing. But there are some downsides that the politicians need to get urgently involved in to start creating rules and guide rails and guardrails to actually make these things, make sure it doesn't go out of control. I personally think it's too late, but.
Wow.
Do you not think though that in, certain sports, physical sports, Olympic sports, combat sports, the AI and the avatar will be used or potentially will be used, but still that, the human connection with another person and the physical of your being and the personal connection.
On a social level as well.
I always think that that's a massive reason why we're put on the planet, is to connect and to connect on a deeper level. Yeah. But maybe that's in time, that's just old school thinking. I'm not too sure.
Well, you're just a human being. I'm afraid to say you are past your sell-by date.
Well, also as well, because we've talked about this a lot, haven't we, Damon?
Yeah.
But it's happening now.
Yes.
When the kids are playing games on the virtual headsets, it's happening now. Yeah. They're getting their dopamine and they're getting their rushes from being in a virtual world. So you could argue,
what's the point in a physical world?
It's already happening.
Yeah, that's right.
You're right. And even in the schools, when I go teach the schools and we're talking about the technology with the kids and their antisocial behavior and they're always on their phones. And I sat there with teachers, and as much as we want people to come into sport and to get off their phones currently, and I sat there to the teachers and I said, well, maybe we're just not the part of the future. Maybe
I actually don't think we are.
Yeah, in time, that's the way the world is going.
That's
it's quite sad,
classically, actually, when you get two bots in a room and we become no longer part of the conversation. So where does this is what I talk about with my daughter and grandchildren, is we've got no idea what this thing looks like in 10 years' time, in 15 years' time. When AI becomes self-aware, then that's starting to get into a territory where I just don't know where we are with it, And the problem is that you need the same people. You need people in the room. You need philosophers in the room. You need economists in the room. You need political scientists in the room. They all get into the room and then they talk and they talk and they talk and then nothing comes out of it. In the meantime, AI is making decisions and evolving all the time. We evolve so slowly in comparison with an AI that, and I think you were talking earlier on about systems being able to repair themselves.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because that becomes self-sustainability at that moment in time. As soon as the computers start to be able to do physical stuff, there's a firm in America called Boston Dynamics, and they make robots. And go on YouTube and type in Boston Dynamics, and some of the stuff that they make is they've got one robot which is 6'5", can perform backflips. It's just absolutely amazing. But they've got another robot which they've actually introduced. And what it does, it looks like a dog, walks like a dog, but it's covered in cameras. And what it does, it walks around building sites looking for potential health and safety stuff. So the physical presence, it's not only the software, but there's a physical presence coming down the line now with robots. The robots are becoming cheaper and cheaper and cheaper.
This is nuts, isn't it? I went to work for one company probably about 18 months ago, and they had this retina recognition. It's in the security, specialized security industry. Yeah. And they can look at a crowd, and these cameras, whatever distance it was, they can look at the eyes of the crowd. They can sense the temperature through the camera. They can see who is, let's use the word terrorist in that crowd. Yeah. They can then initiate the weapon system to take them out from a camera. Yeah. Bang.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So there was one incident. So the Israelis admitted to killing an Iranian nuclear scientist and allegedly they used AI. So what they did was that they knew this guy was in an armed convoy going to his place of work because he was a nuclear scientist. And this van passed them. They had a 1/2-inch caliber machine gun in the back. The 1/2-inch caliber machine gun killed him and yet didn't touch his wife, the driver, or the bodyguard in the same car. Right. That's because they were using AI pattern recognition so that the gun was actually only aimed at his. With a machine gun, you normally expect everybody in the car to actually die. But by actually zooming in to be able to do that, that's one thing. The Chinese have got systems to stop jaywalkers. Now, the Chinese system is really interesting because of the fact that everybody's got an ID card, you're all in their systems. What actually happens, they're using, and they've done it for about 4 or 5 years, they've got facial recognition cameras. If you walk into the road without using what we would describe as being a pedestrian crossing, right, they get fined. Right, because it recognises that, and the money is taken out their bank account automatically.
Oh my God,
that's funny.
This is just. I hope you're enjoying this conversation because this is just mind blowing.
I heard a number of bangs. People went out and just shot themselves.
I know. And you know what? This is something we really have to talk about as a race, as human beings. Where is this going? I know for martial arts, we might be thinking, hold on, I'm going to have to close my martial arts school at some stage. I don't know how long this is going to take. And being of our generation, we think, well, people always need social interaction to get on. But I'm telling you now, they don't.
You've just said to me they don't. You're talking about kids.
The kids at school. They're not doing it.
Yeah.
And we, in our generation, says, you need social interaction. And you know what? They are getting social interaction.
Yeah. With a computer.
The way they know it. Yeah. And you mentioned about kids getting friends. Online.
Yeah.
Just explain that, John.
So what's happening?
This is incredible.
This is, so my understanding is this may not be factually correct, but this is what's coming to the press, that the OpenAI, which is the people behind ChatGPT, have invested in a French company that is building AI avatars to make friends with teenagers. Because as we know, as I'm sure you actually had with Damon here, he's probably quite a difficult teenager. And he gets 12, 13, 14 years old, you're an irritating little SH1T. Actually, what this thing actually does is these things are designed psychologically to help children with some of their gremlins, their anger problems, etc. And they become better at doing it than psychologists. right? So again, what's happening here is a democratization of the skills that you would actually pay a premium for by taking your child to a child psychologist, right? Democratizes the whole thing, which is fantastic.
Surely though,
crazy.
Before I ask you about the direct relationship to certain fields of martial arts, people say that your phones and the internet is a projection of humans' thoughts. It's just gathering your thoughts and information.
That would, yeah, you could say that.
So if AI was to then take over the interaction and the personal kind of touch you need, then surely if AI completely take over, say, humans, then once all the humans' information has been put out there, would it continue to evolve on its own?
Yes.
It would.
Yes, it's a very, very good point. So the way that generative AI was working is something called on the basis of an LLM, which is a large language module. And these are literally millions upon millions of web pages that are crawled, and they are looked at and examined with different weights and different variations. And one of the ones has actually got 1 billion variations in the way that it looks at it. But we are running out of data, right, to train these models on. So now what we're getting into is synthesizing data. So we actually create data for the models to actually go and train themselves on. Now, the way that AI works, there's something called, it's a recursive method. So what it's doing is an AI is continually asking itself questions around its subject matter, right? And then testing itself to see if it's got the answer right. And it just keeps doing it and doing it and doing it until it judges it's got the answer actually right. By synthesizing data, eventually what will happen is AI is going to create its own data so it can learn from its own data. Get your head around that one.
Blow my mind, John.
Yeah. That's one of those things like, this light source was 450 billion light years away. Yeah, right. Okay, of course it was.
This is just incredible. I know we've mentioned martial arts and all the rest of it, but I think it's just a fascinating subject. And I hope everybody's really, really enjoyed this. And when we meet and we go out to the pub for a couple of pints, I say, I can't sleep for days. It's just incredible. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. But interestingly, for martial arts, it will happen.
Yes.
When that happens, we just don't know. But it's...
Can I make let me prefer this, but let me put my business head on here. At the moment, what you do is you teach martial arts, you have a yield number, right? I don't know how much you charge for a lesson. Let's say it's 30 quid for a lesson, something along those lines, right? You budget your whole life on X number of students with a yield of Y, right? Yep. That's how you actually run your life. That's how you budget for it. With the democratization that AI brings, actually the AI training programs, the ones written by a computer scientist out of Boston, who's also a black belt in Taekwondo, what that will do is he'll come into the marketplace and £30 a session, I'll charge $5 a month for it, right? At that particular point, it's got your capability, right? But for $5 a month, why would anybody therefore want to spend £30 for a session with you when they could spend $5 a month and do it whenever they want to in their house? That's the challenge that your industry and many other industries are facing as well, especially around sport, right? Is this democratization of skill knowledge.
The thing I'd challenge you on that, which would be interesting to know your opinion, is you offer an AI that can teach at home for a kid, but the kid necessarily, and a lot of kids that come to martial arts don't have the confidence to come, or sometimes don't want to come. So their parent takes them, and it's that physical interaction, and then they end up staying and doing really well. And even with online Zooms now, it's hard for the kid to focus and to be engaging with the screen rather than get distracted. Whereas if you're dropped into a class, there's no technology for 45 minutes, an hour, and maybe that kid wouldn't have had the concentration to complete the whole class, but they got no choice.
Okay. So I think that's a really, really valid point, but you answered it yourself earlier on, because when you're going into schools, the distraction of technology. So what happens next is this Apple spatial computing technology comes out next year. They've already announced it. I can send you the video because it just blow you away in terms of its capability. At the moment, what it looks like is in the virtualized version of this, it's you and a screen, right? Imagine a three-dimensional version of that when you are fully interactive with it, right? Now, these devices will be expensive. It's only going to be available for a small amount of population. But like everything else with technology, it democratizes, right? Within 3 or 4 years, everybody will have one of these headsets. Apple is gambling on the fact that this is the next iPhone for them. And these things that will make it three-dimensional, as you make it three-dimensional, you can make it a lot more entertaining, right?
So true.
You could actually get in the ring with the boxers.
Yes.
You feel like you're there. Like Blake... Blake, he's on his Metaverse headset and he's in his own world.
Yeah. So like in the football, you get one of the top football clubs in the world, you get, 60,000 people watching, you get so many million watching on the screen. You could actually go on to that pitch.
Yes.
And it wouldn't even be real people playing. It would be like you said.
Well, no. What it would be is so here's the business opportunity.
Wow.
Right. Is let's say David Seaman, the English goalkeeper going back, I can't remember how many years. Yeah. Well, what he does is he lends his style to an AI. You get on the pitch, play with the AI, right, and take a penalty against David Seaman, right, aka known as safe hands, right, and score a penalty. Right. So every time that happens, right.
That studied all the footage.
That can play all the footage. Like it tells you exactly how to kick it. But then what actually happens, he gets paid a fee for it.
And my bedroom.
Like royalties.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting.
So me as a kid in the bedroom, as I'm practicing my skills, I could actually go on and play against him in my bedroom.
Yeah.
From Pele, from the 60s.
Yeah.
Right.
You could actually go, have dinner with Marilyn Monroe and then whatever happens afterwards.
That's where another big sector is. That's where and I'm not going to go into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think we're done.
I fried my brain, John.
This has been such an interesting conversation. Thank you so much.
I'd like to do one thing.
Okay.
It's a final thing.
Hang on. This is always the killer. Go on.
Right. Just go on ChatGPT and have a conversation with it about it. And then go on DALL-E, DALL-E.
Yeah.
And we did this earlier on and we were amazed by the output of it. We actually just said Taekwondo fighter in the style of J.W. Turner, who created some amazing watercolors. And you and I just went, oh my God, that was beautiful. I mean, it really came up with a beautiful.
So instantly there, if you're a designer or a graphic designer out there, I'm really sorry to say this, you don't need them anymore.
No, actually, and there is
web designers.
So my thing was I started one of the first digital marketing companies in the UK back in 2000. And, in those days we would use copywriters, we use designers. Now, right, it's funny because I've got an investment in a AI technology company out of New York. And I was talking to them when I came in earlier on. I said, you need to write content according to what people are actually asking. And he said, well, yeah, we'll use ChatGPT to actually write it for us. And it does. And it's really good. So just go and use it, right? Go and use ChatGPT. I've been using it go and use DALL-E, right? Just use it for everyday tasks. What's coming, and it's going to be announced later on this week, is that you will be able to have a verbal conversation with it. So I'm envisaging sitting in the car with my Apple CarPlay on there with a ChatGPT thing, and I'll be having a conversation about the political, economic, military climate in Israel. And where does it think that the Ukraine war will actually end up, given the fact that now large amounts of ammunition are going to be diverted to Israel from America? So it's those big picture conversations that you'll be able to have in your car. I'm just so excited by that.
Anything, John. You could say, for example, you wanted to launch a new business, you want to set up an aquarium in your house, you want to learn about a certain dog breed or even martial arts. I want to go, right, okay, I really want to know about landing this technique or doing this kata or something. So you can have a conversation and it'll tell you, oh, so what about where does the foot position go? What about this? Where does the weight go? Yeah. And it's going to tell you all this stuff.
Yeah. Let me give, I'm sorry, I will stop in a minute, but let me give you another example. Let's just talk about, my thing is economics or technomics, which is a conversion of technology and economics. Let me give you an example. So we're at the point with sensor technology that it's improved so much. So there is sensor technology now, which is biodegradable, right? So let me give you an example. Every day in the UK, we throw away 1.5 million bananas because we ship them to the wrong place at the wrong time, in the wrong quantity, at the wrong price, because our information on consumption is really poor. So let's say I have a banana and on that banana, it's got a sensor, right? And as I eat the banana, the sensor goes and tells my smart fridge how many bananas I've eaten. And then it actually adds up. It looks the amount of bananas that their family's ordered versus the amount of time it's taken to actually eat them. So the smart fridge then starts to actually get orders in place, which it then posts to the online supermarket. The online supermarket then actually puts that very accurate information into its supply chain, going all the way back to where the bananas actually originate. And what you've got here is a technique, a philosophy known as the economics of abundance, because all of a sudden, using that technique, you ship the right amount of bananas to the right place at the right time at the right price.
Wow.
Which is amazing, but it's not amazing. And the reason it's not amazing is because nobody makes any money. in supply chains, people make money through friction.
So the thing you throw away.
Yeah, the thing you throw away that's how people make money, right? But if you're not throwing anything away, nobody's making any money. Because
the model is built on...
Because the model, the existing model is money. Money is made at the analog model, as I describe it, through inefficiencies of a middleman doing something that somebody else... Well, all of a sudden, if you put 100% efficiency into that supply chain...
The model's broken.
The model's broken, in which case...
As we know it.
As we know. But what it means is nobody ships any bananas. Because nobody can afford to ship any bananas because the supply chain is... No, I really have screwed you up.
Right.
The rest
We
of the
can't
way
do
now.
martial arts. No more bananas.
No more.
John, you're killing
Listen,
me.
this is the question. Just to finish this fantastic conversation, this is the question. Do you keep your bananas in the fridge or not? Okay, thank you so much for coming on. It's been incredible conversation.
And before we finish, John, the question that I forgot to ask you before is, are you going to participate in the flinch challenge?
No. No, and I tell you the reason I'm going to. As you know, I said yes to it.
Yes,
and then I told my wife, and what was it she called me?
She knows us, by the way.
She does. Actually, yes, she does.
Us.
Yeah. And she's an ex-nurse, so she knows about physical injury. And she said, "So you're a 64-year-old man. You got to take a kick from a world champion." She said, "You're a stupid old fool. Don't be so ridiculous."
So it's not.
She's probably got it right, actually. Yeah.
I would have never kicked you full power, John. I would never have done that to you. But thank you for coming on the show, John. It's been really interesting. If you enjoyed it, please drop a comment. I mean, it blew my mind, which is a lot of processing going to be having to go home. So yeah, drop a comment. Please make sure you subscribe and like the video. And if you enjoyed it, shared it. And thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, please share it. This is a great podcast.
Well,
please
I actually know out of all of this, I won't be buying drinks now for the next 3 or 4 months because you two are going to be sponsoring them. Excellent.
Yes.
Cheers, John.
Thank you very much.